I'm Kim Richardson, Senior Customer Relations Manager for Care UK. I'm joined here today with Jo Crosland, Head of Dementia and Lifestyle, and Susie, a relative of a resident living in a Care UK home with dementia. Hello Susie.
Hello.
Our latest national survey found that 93% of respondents felt communication barriers prevented meaningful interaction with their relatives living with dementia. So we're here today to explore and understand why communication can become harder, and that being the first step in staying connected with your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your experience on this.
Well, I use humour with my mum. That's the best way of communicating with her. And if you make her laugh, she usually takes things in better. She understands in a I don't know, in a more appropriate way than if I was, for instance, wearing a hearing aid. If I take the mickey out of the way that she can't hear me, she will then put them in because I've highlighted it, but I've used humour to do it.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. Jo, have you got any experience of using humour as a way of communicating?
I wonder, have you and your mum always had that humorous relationship?
Yeah, she's always been quite cheeky.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're almost using her abilities
Yes.
to remain connected.
Yes, definitely, because that's her personality.
Yeah.
And even though she's sort of lost her sense of humour in one way, if you bring her back to that reference, it improves the communication.
That's fantastic. Did you find in the earlier stages of your mum's dementia that she was getting quite anxious sometimes?
Not really anxious, but frustrated,
Right.
I would have said.
Okay.
Really frustrated. But again, if you make that into a joke.
So you're addressing that
Yes.
frustration
Yes,
by kind of balancing that off with humour.
yes. Like if I talk, she'll say it's an age thing and I'll say something like, because you're 87. And that makes her laugh straight away, and then it breaks the ice, and then you can talk about other things maybe that she doesn't want to talk about. Like she doesn't actually recognise the word dementia because we talk about cognitive impairment rather than dementia because she doesn't feel she's got dementia.
Okay.
And I find it's better to go down that road with her so it doesn't upset her.
That's really interesting. I think it's important, isn't it, to work at somebody else's pace
Yeah.
or ability to cope. If the word dementia is too much, then don't use it. I think you're right. And you know, failing memories sometimes, we all get frayed around the edges sometimes. So if she's not ready to accept that it might be more than that, I think you're right, cognitive impairment sounds just fine.
It's like when she gave up driving. We used the cognitive impairment issue as the reason for giving up driving, not that she had dementia, because it would have made her more depressed, and I think it would have exacerbated her symptoms and made her worse, I think.
And I think it's important to use a language that she's comfortable with
Yes,
as well.
100%.
Yeah, it puts everybody at ease.
I think that's the key thing, to put her at ease, yeah. And then it's like when she moved into Cranford Grange, she was a bit taken aback with some of the ladies that were maybe further along in their dementia journey.
Yeah.
But now she's got to know them and understands that they're all individuals and they've all got their own stories. And, you know, again, using humour and smiling at people makes a massive difference.
So how is your mum, because I understand she's not been here for
8 weeks.
8 weeks. So how has your mum settled in? How has she found that communicating with the other residents?
Well, to start off with, she found it quite daunting, but now she's more stimulated because she's got more company. I've seen a big improvement in her, and she's started to understand, I suppose, that the other residents are just people. So she ignores people that she doesn't want to speak to and speaks to the people that she does.
I think that's probably what we do sometimes anyway, isn't it?
Well, I said to her, it's like the first day at school, Mum. You know, you can't like everybody, and which is true. And this is the sort of analogies I suppose I've been using for her, and she can sort of get her brain around that, and she understands what that means. Because she was, what if people don't like me? And I said, well, you don't like everybody at school, you don't like everybody in your first day of work. It's just the way that things are.
And I think that's sometimes people's biggest fears about coming into a care home isn't necessarily that they're leaving home or they're moving into a different chapter of their life, but actually, is everyone going to like me? And that's where then that sometimes people can be very anxious, and you might see some actions from mum that you wouldn't have necessarily seen before.
I did actually the first couple of weeks that she was here. she was shouted at a couple of residents
Right.
because they didn't understand or couldn't hear what she was saying.
Right.
But now she understands that even though mum's deaf, some people don't wear their hearing aids and can't hear you. So she's sort of making that adjustment, I suppose.
Yeah, finding different ways of
Yeah,
communicating.
exactly
Isn't
that.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, how have you found that Mum has settled in with the lifestyle activities here? Do you feel that's improved your relationship between you two at all?
I wouldn't say it's improved our relationship because we used to do a lot together anyway, but for Mum, it's been more stimulating for her. So I see she's come out of a shell more than she was when she was living in her apartment on her own. So, and the activities are very important to Mum. Trips, activities, integration. She integrates a lot with the other residents on the other floors, whereas some of the ladies up here don't. But I think the integration is very important.
And she's in perhaps a slightly earlier stage of her journey, isn't she? Than
Yeah.
some of the other residents.
That's the only thing I would say. I would like a fourth floor almost, where there's a middle floor between you're not well enough to be in the open areas, but you're not bad enough to be in bed or, you know, confined, so to speak. But she's integrated and she's accepted life and she feels safe, she said to me the other day.
Oh,
That's
well, that's
positive. Yeah.
the most important thing, really, isn't it? Can you explain to us some challenges that you maybe had before Mum came into Cranford Grange?
Yeah, I mean, she's always been very fit and active and she used to go for walks, probably a mile a time, and she used to do that a couple of times a day, and then she started going out 5 or 6 times a day and then getting lost or getting tired, and people in the local area would be bringing her home. So in the end, I had to have a tracker device on her, and the tracker device was going off all the time. So I couldn't leave the area really. I had to go and find her regularly, or people of Knutsford would bring her home. And I just didn't feel that was sustainable living on her own anymore, especially with winter coming.
That must have been very stressful for you.
Well, she was going out for a walk, coming back, forgetting that she'd been for a walk and going out again 5 minutes later. So you could get her going out 6 times in the space of 45 minutes. And every time the tracker would be going off. So it was incredibly stressful. So I felt a little bit selfish, I suppose, when I made the decision, because I felt I was doing it for me. But really, I now realise I was doing it for Mum, really, because she's so much happier since she's been here.
And I think we're all quite social human beings, and we're raised to be social. And then all of a sudden, when you're living on your own and for a great length of time as well, sometimes you can retreat, and sometimes you don't know whether or not that is a dementia symptom or if that's just someone being lonely.
I think she was looking for company because she used to go to the local pub on her own, which is quite amusing. And it was literally just round the corner, and she'd go into the pub, she'd pick up a menu, she'd order half a shandy, she'd sit and read the menu, and then she'd go home again. But the people in the pub became really worried about her, so I got on really well with the landlady, and people in the pub then would escort her across the road and make sure she got home. But I was always getting phone calls from people at the pub saying, your mum's here again. And I just felt she was striving for company.
Bit of company,
Yeah.
bit of safety as well.
And I think this is why she says she feels safe now, because she's got the company, she's got the stimulation, and she feels more comfortable, I suppose.
Can I ask, is thinking about a care home anything that you'd ever discussed with your mum?
Yes, and
Was it?
I had power of attorney for Mum, and in her power of attorney it actually says that she didn't want to go into a care home. So I had to have a very serious conversation with her about it, because unless a doctor had said that she needed to go into a care home, of course the GP said she needed to because of the wandering, so she did accept it. But she never thought she'd be in this place. She thought she'd be living with me and my husband.
Right.
That's what she ideally wanted. But I knew I'd rather her come to a care home and be able to enjoy it,
Yeah.
rather than wait until she's at the point where she doesn't really know where she is or who she is.
Yes.
And all she's doing is coming somewhere to die, really, which is a fact.
Of course, that's an
Of
inevitability of life,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, of course.
I just wanted her to be able to enjoy it, and she understood that, and that's why she agreed to it.
That's really positive. That's very positive, and must have been quite a comfort to you that although her lasting power of attorney had said that she didn't want to come into a care home, she was able to come to accept that.
Yes, and I think one of the major things as well was the fact that it's like when she moved 2 years ago to her apartment, we made sure her apartment was exactly the same as her house as far as layout,
Right.
pictures, etc. So in her room here, we've made her room look like, you know, her sitting room at home, for instance.
Some familiarity.
And familiarity, it makes a massive difference with mum. So if she's just gone into a bare room, you know, with somebody else's furniture, somebody else's decor, she just wouldn't have settled. She gets a lot of comfort from things,
Yeah.
from items.
Especially if they spark a memory as well.
Yeah, yeah. And her long-term memory is amazing. You know, she can tell you the history of all sorts of family members and things that she's done and where she's worked. But if you ask what she had for a lunch today, she wouldn't be able to tell you.
And is that the way that you remain connected when you visit your mum, if she's having a day where her short-term memory is not working very well, that you draw on those longer-term memories with her?
I talk about longer term memories, but also I talk about things that I've been doing as well, because I think that's important. Because she'll still ask me about my husband. She'll still say, how is Sean? You know, it's not as though she's forgotten.
No.
But it's just like an immediate reaction, I suppose.
Yeah, and she is in an earlier stage than perhaps some of the residents living here.
Yes, she is. And that's, I think, it's very obvious. And I suppose when I first came here, I was quite dubious. But I've come to be fascinated with the residents on this floor because they've all got a story and they're just not how they look. That's the only way I can put it. There's far more to them.
It is. Did you know a great deal about dementia before?
My father had dementia.
Right, okay.
My grandparents both had Alzheimer's. So yes, I did have an awareness of it. But I never thought it happened to my mum.
No, of course.
Because there's no dementia in her side of the family either. So it was hard.
Do you feel like you've learnt more with mum than dad? Do you feel like there's more information?
I have learnt more with
available?
mum, but when she was first diagnosed, it was very difficult, firstly, to get the diagnosis. And then after that, you know, you're sort of left to it. You know, and I think there needs to be a pathway on the NHS for people with dementia, because, you know, anything else you have a consultant for that you can go and see and be regularly reviewed, but you don't get that with dementia. It's just like off you go, and I think that's difficult for the person, but difficult for the family. Really difficult.
Well, it's an adjustment for you all, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're all involved.
But I'm that type of person where I will then learn about it because I know I've got to. Because me and mum have always been a team, so you know, and I've got to. My husband jokes that I am the managing director of Jane Finch Inc. because I manage my mum's life and I have done for a long time.
But do you think that need to find out for yourself has helped you to remain connected with your mum?
Yes, I think it has. Yeah, but we've always had a very good relationship, and she's always relied on me. Really, because mum's very artistic and not practical. My mum and dad divorced when I was young, so she sort of always relied on me because I'm very practical. So I've been dealing with her finances and life in general for a long time before she had dementia.
And prior to the dementia diagnosis, did you and your mum communicate well with each other?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we've always had a good.
And did you feel that there was any kind of barrier since the diagnosis?
Not a barrier, but I noticed a lot of behavioural changes before she was diagnosed, and I found that very difficult because the GPs weren't listening to what I was trying to tell them. Because mum had a really bad fall, mum had a really bad bruise on her head, and I then noticed months after that her behaviour was changing, and it took me a long time to get them to scan her, and then they found that on an MRI that she'd had 2 bleeds on the brain. So, and that's what's caused her dementia.
And
so.
so it's the vascular dementia.
Yeah, it's the vascular dementia. Yeah.
So she's, and that's not uncommon,
Yeah.
that it's almost accidentally found
Mm.
because somebody starts behaving differently. What sorts of behavioural changes did you notice?
Driving. I mean, she's always been a really fast driver.
Right.
She's always had really nice cars and driven really fast. And and it was small things. She started driving more tentatively, which I didn't really understand. And then she had a new car that had start-stop, and she couldn't get her head round the fact that it had start-stop.
Right.
And she was getting herself into tricky situations at roundabouts and things, to the point that somebody actually got out of a car once to check she was okay. And it was just small things. We were getting married in the year that she was diagnosed, and she'd gone to listen to my friend who was doing a solo at our wedding, who was doing her first sort of rehearsal in church. Her mum was quite rude to her. That is not my mum's personality at all, because she didn't think she was good enough, and she told her. So she's lost her filter.
Yeah.
Really
So
lost her
that
filter.
damage
Yeah.
to the frontal lobe, which you've said
Yeah.
couple of blade, that's absolutely typical.
Yeah. Like I said to her the other day, God, Mum, my hair looks a mess today. And she said, it always looks a mess. I said, Mum? She said, oh, well, I'm only joking.
But it is, that's pretty indicative that
Yeah.
there's some damage here. That bit that helps us to filter, the discretion bit,
Yeah.
is damaged.
And she did have care when she was at home 4 times a day, and she'd be quite rude about the carers to their faces. You know, she'd say, aren't you ugly? And you see, that's not my mum. It really isn't my mum. However,
Hopefully they didn't take it
no,
personally.
no, I'm sure they're used to it. But yeah, so behavioural changes were the main issue with me. And I was proven right that there was something going on.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was a result of the fall, we don't know.
No.
Whether she had a stroke and that's why she fell, you just don't know.
And that's the conundrum. You'll never know. Did the bleed cause the fall? Did the fall cause
Yeah.
the bleed?
Mm. Yeah.
So what things have you done differently now to better communicate with your mum? You mentioned humour earlier. Is there anything else that you've done to sway sway a conversation barrier?
I suppose I spend more quality time with her now. Whereas before, when I was going round to take her shopping, or I was going round to do her housework, or I was going round to do her washing. So because I'm spending more quality time with her, I'm listening to her more, and I'm understanding her, and I'm learning more about my 87-year-old mother.
That's interesting, isn't it?
You know, now, because I haven't got the same stress. Because I can spend more time with her, and that's all I'm doing is spending
So
time
that's
with
been
her.
a real positive of her coming
Massive
into care
positive,
homes.
yeah. Yeah.
You're rediscovering that human-to-human contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas saying, Mum, I haven't got time, or I've got to do this, I've got to do that, we've got to be here, we've got to be there.
Yeah.
So sometimes then maybe the communication barrier is not always, especially in earlier the stages of dementia, is not necessarily with the person diagnosed with dementia, but actually the person looking after because of your stresses at that point in time.
Because you don't have the time, you know, not only are you managing their finances and their day-to-day affairs, even though you've got care support, those carers are only there for half an hour, 4 times a day. The rest of the time it was on me.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't have time to really listen to what's going on, or really listen
It's
to.
not necessarily always the talking, but the listening is just as important.
Massively, yeah. Yeah, massively.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So, Jo, have you got any advice for Susie on how things may change with her mum, and also how she might be able to adapt herself with the changes?
I think keeping hold of the humour and the listening is incredibly important. What about music? What were your mum's musical tastes?
She loves music, actually.
she?
Yeah, she does. But she now can't remember how to switch the radio on.
No.
So she needs to have that done for her. And that's the one thing I would say is that I've noticed with Mum, she needs to be shown and told how to do things more so. But yeah, classical music, classic FM, absolutely loves it.
And I think as time progresses and perhaps Mum's verbal communication abilities start to fade a little bit more, I think connecting in ways like music I don't know, does she like pets? Does she like animals?
She does. She's always had dogs, yeah. So she loves animals, and I have a dog. So
And that would be a fantastic way of helping mum to connect. Because what we do know when people start to advance on their dementia journey, that it becomes the senses that become more important. So the touch, the sound, the smell, you know, a hand rub, a hand massage if she's not in a position to be able to talk to you, so that you can remain connected. And, you know, seeing a dog or any other pet can have some miraculous, you know, people who perhaps don't speak very often can suddenly ask how the dog is. And it's that drawing on those longer term memory stores. And sometimes it's about finding the hook that undoes that longer term memory. So the classic FM, you know, Christmas is coming, there may be some Christmas carols in years to come where she really manages to reconnect. And I think that's really important, to keep hold of the things that have always been important to her.
I brought my dog here and seen a massive difference with some of the other residents here. You know, residents I didn't think could even verbalise anything.
It's a conversation starter as well, an icebreaker. You know,
It is.
I've had a dog for many years that I've brought to work with me, a tiny Chihuahua, and it was incredible how many residents she would engage in a conversation. Residents that might not necessarily engage in a normal conversation, but as soon as you add a dog into the mix or any kind of animal,
Yeah, something just sparks a connection.
and it can spark a conversation, because it's an easy conversation to have as well. What type of dog is it? It's cute. Look how tiny its paws are, that sort of thing. And it means then that you can still have this connection, the interaction with that person, whether you're a carer, whether you're the housekeeper, whether you're a daughter or a granddaughter. It means that that conversation can flow quite nicely because you've got a subject to talk about that's sparked mum's interest.
It's very much a failure-free type of engagement. There's no pressure on the person to give an answer or to make a decision. It's very much about in the moment. Isn't this a lovely dog? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I've noticed that with mum as well, that she can talk about things that are happening now, maybe, whereas she couldn't talk about something that was happening yesterday. So, you know.
So it very much, as somebody's cognitive abilities continue to decline, it's about that living in the moment. You know, it's lovely coffee, it's cold,
Yes.
whatever it might be, is just the thing that it doesn't require any consideration or recollection or anything. It's about being in the moment.
That's just reminded me of something, that repetition with mum. So mum has this thing at the moment of describing things as picturesque rather than picturesque. And she thinks it's hilarious when she says it, so, which it is quite funny. So wherever we go now, wherever I take her out or whatever, we'll find something where she'll say,
Picturesque.
"Isn't that picturesque?" And then start giggling to herself. But she remembers.
So she knows that she's got the word.
The word
Yeah.
finding difficulties.
Yeah, but she knows.
But it's an okay phrase to use. You know what?
Yeah.
It's a great word.
Made it up, yeah.
But she's decided that it's better than picturesque.
Probably.
So she now uses picturesque. But the point I'm trying to make really is the fact that last week she could say that, and I could take her for a walk tomorrow and she'll say it. So she knows that this is something that we laugh about, the fact that she
So
describes
she's still
things as
able to hold on
picturesque.
to something.
Some things,
Absolutely.
which is amazing.
It
I
is.
find.
It is.
And it seems more humour related.
Yeah, always.
Exactly.
Because she's connecting with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So she'll have a little giggle to herself.
Yeah, and that's great, isn't it?
So over 4 in 10 people find it most challenging when having to repeat themselves to their loved one. Have you ever experienced that with your mum?
No, weirdly, I haven't really had to go down that road yet. She'll ask you maybe something 2 or 3 times, a question, but not very often. Not very often. So I presume if she's not at that stage yet, or maybe it's the type of dementia that she has.
Well, given that your mum's got vascular dementia, it depends where those blood supplies have been, where the blood supply's been interrupted, as to how your mum will be affected. Now, you said about the frontal bits, discretion. There may be some damage here because of starting to have some word muddled difficulties. But dementia is such a complicated syndrome. Everybody will experience it completely uniquely, and unless your mum went through dozens and dozens of scans, which wouldn't be the right thing anyway, we would not know. And I think it's about living in the moment, accepting that this is might be something that mum's doing that's a bit unusual, but it's part of what's going on.
I think that's very important, actually, that they are all so different.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're all treated the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. You know, you could treat somebody that's probably further down the road than mum one way and try and treat my mum the same way. Well, I don't think that's right, because they should really be treated how they are.
Not
at that
everybody
time.
will have your mum's humour.
Exactly, yeah.
So what your mum finds amusing and funny and tickles her would be perhaps not comfortable for somebody else, because we're all unique beings anyway. And again, it very much depends on how dementia affects the brain, that vascular damage in your mum's brain, how it's affecting her brain.
No, okay.
And all of us have a baseline of brain functioning. The humour is a lovely example. If your mum's always had a cracking sense of humour, that's not necessarily going to change. The way that she can express humour might do.
Yeah.
But somebody who's always had not a good sense of humour, I was going to say miserable, and that's not very nice, but somebody who's never had the same sense of humour isn't going to suddenly find things particularly funny necessarily. So it's very much, you're right, everybody will experience their dementia uniquely, because we're all individual.
I find it highlights what people were like when they were younger.
Yeah.
You know, as they go through their journey of dementia, it seems to bring to the fore the things that the personality that they had when they were children. And mum was a very cheeky child and always getting into trouble. And that, you know, mum is getting a bit like that now.
And I go back to that frontal lobe piece, because all the things about, I mustn't find that funny because somebody else might not find it funny. If that's gone, it's funny. And so that's something actually just to welcome.
I think so.
Yeah.
Jo, only 7% of our communication is verbal, 50% of it is body language. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I can. As I've already alluded to, really, that, you know, as verbal communication for people with dementia declines, not all of us are great verbal communicators, but our body language speaks quite literally volumes. And what we often fail to do, and I think you make a really important point there about everybody's different, our tolerance levels are all very different. So if somebody's starting to get quite agitated or irritated or anxious and they can't express that verbally, we need to be able to find out that actually this person's starting to find this a bit difficult, this situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes, going back to what we said about the dog, the touch, the music, those quite soothing activities that don't need verbal communication for them to work can be really helpful to think about.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Our national survey also highlighted that 45% of people surveyed were worried about their loved one feeling lonely. Is that something that you experienced with mum at home?
Yeah, I'd say that was the main reason that she was going out and walking a lot, was because she was lonely. And I didn't want her to not be enjoying her life. And I wanted her to have more stimulation. So coming to somewhere like Cranford Grange meant that she had people around all the time and got more stimulation. And she said to me the other day that she's never lonely, which was amazing for me
That's
to
a
hear.
beautiful thing, isn't it? Because
It was.
It's very common for people to experience loneliness when they have cognitive impairment, because fear about integrating and engaging with other people, if you are aware that your cognitive abilities are declining, you know, people will naturally withdraw. And there's so much stigma still about dementia as well.
And I think it's the fact that she's got help all the time as well that she likes.
Yes.
You know, and
People around her.
Yeah, and people around her.
Because human beings are pack animals, and we are designed to live within communities.
I mean, mum was deteriorating when she was living on her own, to the point where she wasn't even getting dressed till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now she's up, dressed, washed, had breakfast, and on a trip at 10:15.
Fantastic.
You know, there's a big difference.
Yeah. And what an improvement to the quality of her life now.
Exactly that. Yeah, I would say I'm very relieved that I made the decision now for her to come here, because of that, her quality of life has improved.
And yours.
And mine, yeah.
Yours.
And mine.
And yours,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Susie,
you.
for coming in and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.